no matter what type of bird you're keeping, whether it's a finch, budgie, canary, cockatiel, etc. Number one important thing is hygiene. You have to keep these things clean all the time. Anything that the bird interacts with is going to become a target for a bacteria. Drinkers, these need to be cleaned every single day, and it's no good just putting your finger in. You need to get something like this, which is a bit of a mangled old bottle cleaner now, and you need to get a new one, and then give a really good clean out, a bit of hot soapy water, make sure it's thoroughly clean on the inside, and give it a good wash on the outside, etc. Just to make sure it's thoroughly clean, and do that on a daily basis. And when you eat these, it's no good just putting your fingers in there either. I usually get a paintbrush and I get right in the little cracks and crannies, and then on the outside I get like a green pad, give it a good clean, and rinse it off, and that should be good to go. But once a week I put everything into a bucket, and I mix up a solution of Vercon S, or you could use bleach or whatever sterilising fluid you decide to use. It should be okay. And just leave them to soak overnight, and do that once a week. But every day when you go to feed and you give your birds drinking water, even the baths, clean it all out and make sure it's thoroughly clean, especially the seed dishes as well, because when they eat they wipe their beak quite often around the seed dishes, and they do pick stuff up and drop it. Then the other birds come and do the same thing, so they're kind of sharing food that they've had in their mouths. If you have a walk-in aviary that you're able to get in and out of, don't use the same shoes that you've been walking around the street in, because the street is full of bacteria, it's full of everything, and you're going to basically just walk it right on into your aviary, and you don't want that, because the birds are going to go straight down when you're not there, and they're going to be pecking around, and they've got the bacteria, then the birds become ill. So just bear that in mind. I think it's a better idea to get yourself a cheap pair of slippers or something, and as soon as you're about to go into the aviary, take your shoes off, go into put your slippers on, walk into the aviary, and then you can do whatever you need to do in there. And when you come out, just go back on, put your normal shoes back on, etc. Just to keep it clean, really. I mean, most of the time your birds get ill, it's normally 9 times out of 10 your birds get ill because of something that you've brought into them. Not because people, I hear this all the time as well. People say to me, "Oh, birds are dirty. Oh, you don't have them in the house," or etc. because they're germ carriers. They're not. The birds are cleaner than what we are. They really are very, very clean animals. I mean, they bath God knows how many times a day to keep themselves clean. I don't know many people that bath every single day, if a week. Some people don't bath that hardly at all. But it's birds. They do. They're very clean conscious. They're always preening themselves, and they're just nothing like humans at all. And I think most of the time, whenever your bird gets ill, it's something that you've brought into them, and maybe you know it, maybe you don't. It may not even be from another bird. You may have bought something from a shop, bad seed or something, bad egg food, and then you transfer the germ or the disease, etc., onto the bird from that way. That's another way of transferring diseases. A lot of diseases and germs happen naturally in the wild, and they are around us all the time anyway. Yeah, that is granted, but a lot of the time it's brought in by human. And another thing is when you're handling chicks and eggs, which I'll definitely cover later on in another video as well. I don't understand the point why people need to put their hands in their nesting boxes and then they handle everything. Use a mirror, because as soon as you pick up an egg, if you haven't washed your hands, whatever's on your fingers is going to transfer to the egg, and it will go straight to the embryo and it will destroy it. It will just kill it. Most times it will. That's if there's something on your fingers. And same with the chicks. Chicks and eggs are very vulnerable. They have hardly any feathers on them. Their immune system just isn't that great when they're young. So you have to think about all the time. When you're chopping up food, etc., when you're making food for the birds, make sure all the sideboards have been cleaned down before and after. Must always be clean. Never give the birds old seed. I know you get seed cleaners and people like to put all these things in because they don't like the wastage. If you want your birds to eat all of the seed, you want a wider dish which isn't so deep, and just put a nice surface of seed on top so they can get to it and eat all of it. They won't waste none. And if they do, the next day you don't give them so much, you give them a little bit less. You don't bombard it all, then put all the seeds into a seed cleaner, then it blows away the chaff. But like a lot of those seeds have been picked up by the birds and they've dropped them again. So if there's anything on those seeds, it will basically transfer onto the other birds. It's a good way of spreading things. Baths must be constantly cleaned. I never really leave a bath in there. I put a bath in there, let them have their bath and take it out. If it's a hot day, granted, I will leave it in there to the end of the day. I'll take it out. Next day in the morning, they get a fresh one. It's always clean. Another thing I wanted to mention, which is quite important as well, is with your drinkers. When you place your drinker in that cage, if you're putting it through the wires, don't put it in the same place all the time, because they drink from it and they will drop water. There becomes what you call a wet spot or a wet patch, and then it becomes a breeding ground for coccidiosis or any cocky bacteria, and it's pretty hard to get rid of stuff like that if you don't detect it in time. So it's good to put your drinker there today, or for a couple of days, and the next couple of days put it on the other side, etc. Just move it around, but make sure it's easy so that they can get to it. Same with baths as well. But unfortunately, if you've got a small cage, you're very limited where you can put your bath, because you normally find that they're the hook-on ones, so you have to be in the same place all the time. So that's an important reason why, if you do have small cages, and I do agree, you should give them a bath every day. Birds need to keep clean. You can't take that away from them. And the thing is, if you do put a bath on a cage, make sure you clean that cage out regularly, maybe twice a week really, preferably. If you've got a lot of cages, you might think, oh, I'll blow that, it's just too much work. And if it's too much work, you should be keeping birds anyway. I mean, birds are hard work, they're a full-time job if you've got enough of them. And they like to keep clean, just like we do, so it's very important. Another thing I was thinking about discussing was, when you've got birds in a cage, you do sometimes get visitors, children, dogs, cats, etc., and they want to put their fingers in the cage. Just a hello little birdie, thinking that I don't know why they do it. I don't know what they're expecting the bird to do, whether it's going to come down to stick its head down or something, let me pat you on the head sort of thing. So as soon as they do that, they're handling the cage, and then the kids move away. The birds eventually at some point will come down and they'll nibble on the cage, because birds like to grind their beaks down. And then if there is any bacteria that's been transferred onto that cage, then the bird picks it up, and then eventually the bird becomes ill, and possibly the bird will die. So keep the cage clean at all times. Keep the whole room clean. If you've got dusty corners, etc., bits of seed on the floor, clean it. Just get rid of it. Make sure it's kept clean all the time, and make sure the environment has got plenty of wind, not wind so much as fresh air. But you don't want to leave it like it constantly where it's drafty, because if you've got foreign finches like Australian, African birds and places from hot countries, they don't like the cold weather. They don't like cold wind. It's not really so much the cold, it's the cold wind they don't like, the drafts. It's just not good for them. And I don't really agree with people trying to acclimatise birds to cold weather anyway. Tropical birds are tropical, and it's just genetic. They're used to the heat, they don't like the cold, and it's like trying to tell a stupid person, you can't, stupid people can't be taught. And it's the same principle with a bird. They're genetically used to the warmth, they're not used to the cold. People put them in the cold, and sometimes the bird will survive, and they think, yeah, my birds are all acclimatised, they're alright. That bird is probably freezing to death. It doesn't like it at all. It's not comfortable, and it's really not good for the bird's health. They need to be kept at a minimum temperature and a maximum temperature. Anywhere between that, good. Anywhere out of it, no good. Not good for the bird at all. And I don't like seeing what I see online a lot of the time, where people have got them, it's snowing outside and they have their birds in this aviary and they're flying around, but yeah, okay, granted, it's all covered up, but most of the time they're not heated or anything. And Gordians and shaft towels or birds like that, they don't like it. They don't like it at all. They don't like the cold. Nobody likes the cold. As simple as that. So that was just something I wanted to point out. And lastly, I did want to point out again, I know I mentioned odd things in the cage, bits of metal, but if you've got anything jagged edges, sharp edges in your cage, get rid of them, smooth them out, paint over them, just get rid of them. And so it's just for safety's reason really. So just keep your hygiene in your mind all the time when you're working with your birds. Whenever you put your hands in there, and when you take your hands out, before you put your hands into another cage, wash your hands. Yeah, it only takes 2 seconds. Just give your hands a good rinse off, because that's the quickest way to transfer one germ from one cage to another. So oh yeah, I must not forget perches. When you clean the cage out, perches as well, sterilise them. Boil them if you have to, or put them in a bucket of bleach, Verconess mixture, or whatever. Just sterilise them, because some people, depending on where you live or the environment that they're in, you may have mites, and they come up, they come out of their cracks and crannies, and at night time they crawl along the perches and they crawl up the bird and they feed off the blood from the bird. And sometimes they don't go away. Sometimes they actually go into the wood. They hide in the cracks and crevices of the wood. So make sure they're thoroughly sterilised at all times as well. Any toys, bits of string that you might have in there that they like playing around with, any old bits of grass, get rid of it. Anything old, get rid of it. Always have it new, clean. The cleaner an environment for them, the better. You don't have to have it surgical or completely sterile environment. You don't have to go that far, but it has to be reasonably clean. And that's to keep all bacteria to a minimum. So, and that's it. So that's all I can think of for this video.